talking about.
Would you consider that what you do, which we don't know, is actually quite helpful to the management of stress game? That new things are going to come to the surface that are just different challenges. So that's one because my interpretation, which we could go there, but was almost like you're minimizing, in my interpretation, of everything that you do to honor self. Food for thought. The other thing was that when just going back to the exercise, what I'm going to invite you to do is, or restate, is take the mental element to this stress, the stories, the ideas. And I'm going to invite you to actually put them somewhere else. I don't care what object, but parking lot that. Just the thinking element. So perceptions, ideas, conclusions, interpretations, associations. What I'd like for you to do is when you put those aside, the sensation of what you're experiencing in the body, put that on the rock and observe that. So you're observing the energy and the sensation and whatever emotions come up. That's what's on the rock.
Okay.
To the side, on any other object or in any other location, it just can be in your periphery. Put all of the mental elements that you attach to the throat. So your mom and dad stuff that we talked about, you're 4 years old, I think it was, or whatever age when you were water skiing, and the perception. All of those are stories. Acknowledge and validate. I hear you, but put those to the side. And just be with the sensation. Draw, and that's when it was drawing that sensation in, putting the sensation back on the rock. And by doing that exercise, it strengthens, at least in my experience and with others, it strengthens the observer part of self. So that you fundamentally see the sensation in the body and not identify with it as who and what you are.
Yeah.
You maintain the position of observer so that you realize that, not to say that you don't, not to suggest that you minimize or ignore or deny that you even have the sensation. It is just taking a step back and being able to play the role of observer of the object, which is the sensation, versus being the sensation.
Yeah, I get that. That makes sense. And that clarification was helpful. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. So where are we at today, and what would be Tyler's desires to dance with?
What's coming to mind for me is being worthy of abundance. Am I worthy? Am I feeling complete and whole with the attraction and support of the world, my community, the energetics of abundance?
And so if you were to unpack that.
So as I explained, starting the process of creating this course, of starting a new chapter in the kind of work that I'm doing, the kind of offerings I'm creating, the kind of creator that I am stepping into is just different. It looks different. So finding worthiness in this new way of showing up in the world is what I'm beginning to step into. And I think there's a part of me that might not be confident or feeling like I'm worthy to teach the world in this new way.
So what I think I hear you saying is, how can I teach this world regarding abundance when I don't believe in abundance for myself?
Anytime I laugh, I know it strikes me in some way. How can I teach the world about abundance if I don't feel like I live abundantly and feel abundant in myself right now? That's what I heard.
Some version of that.
It's a great question, and I don't think it's completely possible. To some extent, it probably is, but in some ways, it's hypocritical.
Okay. So what's standing in the way?
Some belief that comes from somewhere.
Okay.
Let's see. What's coming to mind for me is that, well, this just my experiences of receiving support or money or gifts or abundance comes from my family, right? Like that's where, I was first developing a relationship with acquiring things and receiving abundance, right? So and I've actually never considered this. Like the first relationship that we have to money is how I've approached the relationship that my dad and my masculine ancestries had with money and abundance and ayahuasca, but I've never addressed my own relationship with receiving money, with receiving gifts, receiving abundance throughout the history of my life. And I feel like what I can really recall is like when I was a kid, I was this greedy fuck, super greedy kid. Like I would always go to my grandma's and ask her to take me shopping. I just loved going shopping. I found that stimulating and found my worth in acquiring new stuff, and still do to some extent. But I would always remember her being like, yeah, I'll take you, but there's some shame there. Like she shouldn't be taking me, but she is. And yeah, so a long history of and energetics behind receiving things.
So if you were to put an emotion behind the receiving, what is the emotion or sensation in the body that you feel?
Very aware of my palms, pressure on my palms and my feet, soles of my feet. Some pressure behind my eyes, my forehead.
And if you were to just guess as to what those things represent to you around the receiving, would that guess be?
Yeah, so those three things, the feet represent going somewhere to get what I need, and the hands represent the actual grasping of what I'm receiving, and the head and forehead represent like the speculation behind the purity of this reception.
Okay, so How do you give that to yourself?
Give what exactly to myself?
Abundance. How do you help self? Whether it's abundance, whether it's self-care.
Mm. How do I give myself abundance? I don't know. I don't know if I do. I don't know if I come from a place of really offering myself unconditional loving abundance. I do things that I could label as such, but yeah, I don't think it's coming from that pure place. For example, like the idea of having a hot, warm bubble bath lately has really like felt good to me. And having like a private space to just lay in a bath sounds so fucking good, but I don't have the capabilities of doing so right now. One thing that I really love, I thought about this recently. I had an acupuncture treatment, but there was a little bit of massage there, and that's actually not completely giving to myself, but in some ways it's facilitating giving to myself. I really appreciate having hands on my body, and finding a way to have that for myself is really important to me. But yeah, again, nothing has been happening consistently, really.
So tell me how you parent yourself around when you perceive lack.
Well, lately I've been trying to not parent myself around the noticing of lack, but noticing where I have abundance, where I have gain. And that's the whole law of attraction thing that I've just been kind of studying a little bit lately. And I recognize how there's also an importance of recognizing the shadow and not denying the shadow. So we could play with that perspective as well.
So how do you define abundance?
To me, abundance is nurturance. It's being taken care of, worry-free for the most part. Having enough to give back in some way, without expectation in return. And I try to give without expectation in return, regardless of that anyway. So it's kind of a null point, but maybe give more. Yeah, it's contentment, it's wholeness.
So abundance is contentment and wholeness. So what is standing in the way of this contentment and wholeness?
The belief I'm that I'm not already that.
So what do you want to do about that? Like, let me say it this way: how do you benefit by holding on to that?
How do I benefit from not being content and whole? Well, I'm definitely, by doing that, I relate with a majority of the world and I find connection that way. And maybe more so, my family or people that I'm close with. It's just something I know, familiar with, and haven't been able to imagine the other side. And yeah, it's just another way of staying attached to my stories that I've listed off.
Do you feel like, are you the kind of guy that needs a new story to give you the encouragement to take action? Or are you kind of comfortable just dropping the old story and figuring it out as you go to gain confidence?
I think what helps me gain confidence is seeing the other side. So for example, like I told you earlier, like seeing a new client come in the way I intended for things to work, and for similarly finding people that are willing to test run my course, like that evidence is what allows me to reinforce the positive belief and let go of the old one.
So what's the benefit and the consequence of that strategy?
The benefit and the consequence.
Mm-hmm.
The benefit is benefit of that story is I'm blanking on that. Consequence would not being able to man, I just can't formulate words right now. I don't know. I'm blocked. You say that again.
Love you, brother. When you said having a new paying client or having X, Y, or Z, you said that gives you those outcomes, give you the encouragement to see the other side. And I'm just simply asking, what is the benefits and the consequences of that as a strategy to gain confidence?
Yeah, the benefit is that it's real world. It's showing me that something I'm doing is actually paying off in some way, like my intentions are coming to fruition in some way. But the consequences are that I'm not acknowledging the shadow. Like when I am in that heavier place, it's kind of denying what's going on there.
Can I piggyback on your wisdom here? So on one side of it, I hear you saying is, I'm going to translate as, I've learned to become codependent on validating who and what I am, i.e. abundance, if someone or something shows up in my life. The benefits is that I tell myself a story that means I must be on the right track because I'm uber codependent for my identity to be attached to someone doing something that I will validate myself and seduce myself to thinking that that's a benefit. I also hear you saying is, or my version of what I hear you saying is, the consequence of doing that is I perpetuate my codependency on the outside world, which therefore I'll never find abundance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can relate to that.
Okay. How do you relate to
that? Well, I've just seen how I have experienced myself as a codependent person in relationship in the past, and find my value in romantic relationships. Find my value. I've seen that in relation to, family in the past as well. And yeah, when I'm receiving that from clients or business, things are great. And when I'm not, they're not.
Thank you. And it's definitely understandable, brother, that there is an inherent codependent element to our navigating life.
Why are you smiling?
Because there's a relatability. So, yay for you. Yay for us. What would it mean to not be codependent and yet still live? Let me say it this way. What would it mean for you to live finding abundance within, and if your actions end with your actions being congruent with that, what would that feel like for you?
Can you say it again?
What would it feel like for you to find abundance within and take action from that place? Rather than, just to be clear, rather than being codependent on someone to validate me about abundance. But if I found abundance within and shared my abundance that I found within myself to the outside world and worked my ass off. So we're not talking about sitting on a Zen cushion all your life. It is self-parenting, finding abundance within and sharing that with the outside world rather than trying to find abundance in another situation, event, person, circumstance.
It feels like trust in myself, and essentially trusting everything that I'm doing and being, trusting in my intentions, trusting in my wisdom and my experience. And to me, trust in my body of myself feels like pleasurable sensations in my hamstrings and calves. I feel some tingling going on at the bottom of my feet. Just took a nice long exhale. It felt nice. I actually have to plug my phone in as well, so I'm going to move too. It's my swoleplex.
Right on, brother. The cock dieselplex.
Ashley's gonna get mad at me for walking in right now. 1 sec. I'm gonna grab my charger.
No problem.
Thursday is Thanksgiving this week.
You know, I have to grab my AirPods because Ashley's loud as fuck. Okay, so we were talking about trust in abundance within myself.
Yes, we can switch out abundance with any word. Love.
Ah,
Can you hear me?
yes. I can hear you.
Okay, cool. So we can, just to be clear, from my perspective, is we can swap out abundance with love or any other perceived need that we're experiencing. And the minute that we project, as you were giving voice to, at least as I interpreted, Tyler, is if you go to Ash to get love, you're going to get your ass kicked because you're bypassing finding yourself as the default source of the love that is within, and then sharing that with the outside world or in a relationship or partnership, versus trying to say, Ash, you need to do X, Y, and Z in order for me to feel love. And if you don't, well, then you don't get love. Okay. I see you now, brother.
I have no idea why that happened. Just kicked me out.
We are back. Can you hear me? Yeah. Okay, cool. So I was summarizing saying abundance can be swapped for anything. As I understood what you're trying to find abundance in a client, therefore I'm abundant by people paying me, similar to a relationship and partnership with Ash, that if I have her be the source of my love or feeling love, then I'm creating uber codependence, yes, which we talked about, and therefore I don't find it within, and then I'm setting myself up to be very conditional that when she does A, B, and C, I get love or interpret that as love. And when she doesn't do 1, 2, or she does 1, 2, and 3, that is unlove. And then I'm fucked, basically. If I just to
So,
summarize that.
so being, what my core needs are, right?
Right.
Feeling loved and appreciated. I mean, should I put like 80%, 90% of my focus on creating that for myself, creating that, well, essentially meeting my own needs and parenting myself in that way, and that'll solve all of my problems?
Is the answer to your question, as John would say.
Wait. Did you say that's the answer to my problem?
I'm saying is the answer in your question, or some form of the answer to your question.
Yeah.
I mean, this
I get
kind of a
that.
little bit piggybacks on when we texted a little bit about, can it be that simple, or some version of that, right?
So again, kind of tangent, we could play whatever, we could see it, but what comes to mind for me is the experience of being open in a relationship, which we've actually kind of played with this idea recently. It seems like Ashley has come around to this idea more recently. And on Sunday, we went to ecstatic dance with the container at dance being like we were going to practice being open there. Like energetically, we were showing up in an open relationship at the dance. And that was that small container. And anyways, so that's fresh in my mind. That experience is fresh in my mind. So when we're looking for or feeling the need for multiple partners or different intimate relationships, are we just finding new ways to remind ourselves about loving ourselves in different reflections?
How does that land for you? How does your question sit with yourself?
Yeah. I mean, it feels like, yeah, I yeah, I feel like that's probably to some extent true for me, and that essentially what I'm looking for is in that experience another reminder or more validation of feeling love for myself, appreciated in some way.
Would you be willing just to restate that for our conversation?
I feel validation by the repetitive reminder of intimate appreciation via current, new, novel, past partnerships, relationships, experiences.
Cool. That's pretty powerful. How could you be open and how could you be in an open dynamic while giving your love and sharing your love versus being dependent on the open to get love?
Um, I feel like I really want to show love to everybody. Like I really feel that to be true for myself. And there's fear about that because, and this is, I love playing with what's coming up for me here. I want to show love to people, and there's just pieces and parts of me that are afraid to do that for a variety of different reasons.
Okay.
You want to hear?
Well, I'm always
I
open to
mean,
it, brother. So
yeah.
where I'm just going to ask you the question though is that I'm going to invite you. It doesn't necessarily have to be today, but at some point, I'm inviting you to get really clear about how you can share love and what form does that come in. Said specifically is sometimes it can be sensual only, sometimes it could be sensual and sexual, sometimes it could be just sexual, sometimes it could be BFFs, sometimes it could be very caring, like empathetic vibe. I mean, those are just stories, options. I'm just sharing with you about what does it mean to share and show love.
Yeah.
And so I'm inviting you to say, how diverse are the stories and the ideas that you have about love? That's one to consider.
Hmm. So in what ways am I showing love or willing to show love? Am I showing love?
Yes, and at the same token, um, are you getting tunnel? How could you be tunnel vision or blinded to still seducing yourself into thinking that these experiences are nothing more or less than you're trying to find love outside of self?
Yeah, I get that.
Yeah. So if you were to come up with a way to check in with your heart, how would you know that you're sharing your love with the outside world in whatever format that comes, or that you're seeking love outside of yourself? How do you know?
I don't know. I feel like I have a story that it's hard for me to connect to my heart in that way, to have a uh, clear communication between that part of myself.
What why are you hiding behind that story?
Mm, well, it's easier because I don't have to be vulnerable if I hide behind that. Yeah, I mean, so then, my next question for myself is in what ways am I not being vulnerable, or in what ways can I express my vulnerability to show more of my heart? And my response to myself is, I feel like I'm pretty open with uh well, thought just came to mind. I was gonna say I feel like I'm pretty open to most that are willing to listen. But then the thought came up was, am I honest with myself? Am I open and honest and vulnerable with myself?
Hello.
So what am I hiding from myself? What am I not vulnerable about with myself?
What is your greatest fear about being
Dying.
vulnerable? Okay, got it. Um, thank you. I'm not saying that to minimize that. I'm saying is, let's parking lot the life death scenario related to being vulnerable. And maybe it's still related to that, but I'm going to ask it that way from that angle. What is your greatest fear about being fucking vulnerable?
Comes down to rejection of some sort. Being alone.
I appreciate that a lot, Tyler. So, when those thoughts and sensations come up, how do you parent yourself? How could you parent yourself when you're old? Well, I'll say it this way. How old do you feel when you feel the fear, the visceral fear of rejection?
12 was the first number that popped up for me.
Okay. So can we agree then, when you have deep-seated rejection, at least for now, the part of you that shows up front and center to the forefront is 12-year-old emotional Tyler?
Yeah, it's funny actually. So when I'm fearful in that way, and this actually just came up because I played with this, like I said, on Sunday at dance, it sounds like my voice is younger because it's kind of constricted because it's afraid, and it's like this young little 12-year-old Tyler is speaking.
I love
Hey,
it.
do you guys like me?
And yet, and that's an, that's important to hear yourself, counsel that part of yourself, and acknowledge that. That is,
Mm-hmm.
for whatever it's worth, uh, could
Yeah.
be understood as a point of vulnerability with yourself in my presence. Celebrate you on that.
Mm-hmm.
So, Tyler, the question becomes: is how do you parent the 12-year-old in such a way that that isn't your predominant energetic signature, so that you can become present in the present moment and take appropriate action of vulnerability that you choose to in that moment?
How can I parent a 12-year-old to be present in that moment
Let me ask it this
around the
way,
fear of
Tyler.
rejection?
Yeah, I'm going to just say it a slightly different language. How would you parent your 12-year-old? Parent yourself about this perception of your 12-year-old so that you maintain presence and not age regress?
Hmm. Yeah. I would I would tell him to just have fun with it and understand like life goes on much longer after this, and you have many opportunities to enjoy the presence of yourself and other people going forward, and you're going to laugh at this one day, so enjoy it. Yeah, that's all that's coming up for me. Did I answer the question? Was that
I don't know. Did you feel? Would you say
felt like
that you?
felt like that was my answer?
I hear you. How do you feel as you reflect upon your parenting your 12-year-old that way? How do you feel?
I feel good. I feel happy. I feel like, yeah, there's less fear in getting myself out there and being vulnerable and showing love and appreciation for people that even I might not know. Yeah, not being worried about a response for me.
So your 12-year-old is really driven by the fear of rejection. What? How are you going to parent yourself and parent the 12-year-old when there is the illusion of a rejection?
Well, I guess if the fear comes up for him, remind him that this story of the fearfulness is just that, and it's an illusion, and that he and we are capable of overcoming that story and setting that aside and recognizing another possibility, which is openness, lovingness, and fearlessness.
So what comes up for you when you hear yourself and your version of counsel?
Yeah, I mean, the thing that always comes up for me around these uncoverings is the remembrance of it in the moment. um, and what I'm thinking about now is that maybe a reminder that I might remind myself is that when I'm feeling something strongly, ask myself how old I'm feeling. And that could be the quickest introduction into, okay, like that's what we're working with right now. How old am I feeling? How old am I feeling? How old do I feel right now? What feeling does this come from? What age does this come from? Like things like that. I just need to penetrate that into my day-to-day experience. Just fuck it into my world.
Remember the play work I gave you last week?
Correct. Yes, I do.
Okay. So if you were to merge this how old am I with some form of that past week's exercise, what would be the play work that you would offer yourself?
Similarly, for example, I go to ecstatic dance last weekend, and I'm finding myself really attracted to this one girl, and there's all the feelings around Ashley being there and open and playing with this. And if I'm dancing on the beach there in my board shorts and I happen to have this beautiful rock that I chose last week, I pull the rock out and I notice what I'm feeling in my body as I recognize the course of my feelings throughout this evening and or this afternoon. And I, at any particular time, choose the feelings that I'm working with, and I feel it, and then I place the feelings onto the rock, within the rock, and I witness them, and maybe ask those feelings, the rock, where is this coming from? What age does this feel like? But really, like seeing that age, seeing that Tyler, seeing those sensations there on the representation of the rock, pulling them back in, feeling them, seeing them again in my body, again playing with that reversal of the feeling and sensations, to not associate with the stories and the feelings. And yeah, I think that's it.
Does that sound playful enough? Does that
Yeah,
check your
I'm
box?
gonna go to dance next week with the rock in my pocket and just now it might not be a bad idea to have something though that does represent that to me. And I actually do think I've been wanting a necklace that has rose quartz, the heart opening stone. I might find something like that and play with something like that as that tool.
Cool. I would invite you to not only ecstatic dance, but can you continue to find an opportunity to do that play work on a daily basis to facilitate yourself for whatever it's worth? Because when shit hits the fan, if you don't, as we would, I think, mutually appreciate, if you aren't predisposed to any facilitation, it's going to be a fucking bear when your sensory input is overload, to find the ability to ask yourself those questions and unmerge with the sensory input being too much or too greater than, kind of like too much supply and demand equations are out of whack, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I would really invite you to get comfortable with exploring self-parenting in a deeper, intimate way, so that you can experience the rock, but from a standpoint of being centered as you're watching and experiencing as an observer what the hell's going on. Like for me, sometimes I'll give the example, Tyler, where when we feel angry, when we're merged with it, we're wrestling with how we want to express it, but it's going to get expressed typically in some form or fashion. And all I can tell you is from my experience, when I've off-gassed or I've just sat with this energy that we'll call anger, this emotion we'll call anger, it dies, it wanes, right? And then it goes away. Where and how that fucking phenomena goes, I don't know, but there's an onset of it, there's a middle duration of it, and then it goes away, right? What I'm inviting you to do is, through self-parenting, is to ask yourself, how old am I? Play with the rock in a way that you can maintain observer status, so that that energetic signature of the fear, the deep visceral fear of rejection, can do its thing without you having to intervene and therefore act out that 12-year-old. You're letting the 12-year-old play with yourself in that big ass fucking lot that you're in. And it's doing its thing, no matter how intense and visceral it is. And then it's going to die down like the wind and just blow out of Dodge. can you allow yourself to cultivate that kind of self-parenting so that you're not expressing nor repressing the anger, but playing with what's underneath it and letting it do its thing. And then when it passes, you can maintain your appropriate age presence. Therefore, I then will have the opportunity to then share your love or behave in a way that you're not walking around in this fear of rejection, and allowing love to show up in whatever form, casual friends, all the way to orgies or whatever, everything in between, and however that shows up.
Got it. I will play with that.
Yeah. So cool.
Cool, man.
I'm going to just throw this out there, is the same thing, just to close the loop on this not vulnerability, but abundance equation. Ultimately, the sensation of a lack of abundance is no different than in my opinion, a different energetic signature, but we can label it anger, a lack of abundance, there's a lack, whatever the hell it is, right? Can you pause? How old am I? What does it look like? What does it feel like? Let that sense of lack in the body do its thing, like with the rock, and let it play out while you're not the active participant with that age regressed energetic signature, for a lack of terms. Then when it passes, then you'll end up taking the behavioral steps that you would have anyway, and you're just now not doing it from a lens of lack. You're just doing it because I want to fucking share my heart with the world. Or let's just say, for business purposes, Jason's opinion, by putting aside the sense and the energetic sense of lack, if you don't, then your behaviors or a lack of behaviors are coming from that energetic signature. The offering is that just to let it do its thing, let it pass, or in conjunction or in parallel with it if you need to, but you're create a distance so that the age appropriate Tyler and non-age regress Tyler is actually balling for business, but not because my abundance is dependent upon the business. That energy is just not present. That's what a long-winded maybe story to circle back to the connecting of all of these dots.
Yeah, I get it. I totally get it. Yeah,
Yeah.
I appreciate that perspective for sure.
Yeah. Cool. If you're open, I can send you a really cool, interesting meditation on this perceptions about needs and seeking happiness outside of self, if that's cool with you.
Please.
Yeah. All right.
Definitely.
Well,
you want to stop the recording?
sure.